everyone, welcome back to my channel. How is your September going so far? This is our Simple Abundance here. You are with us on our journey through Sarah Ban Beathnach's book, Simple Abundance. And if you're watching real time, this is September 2020. We are talking about a lot this month already. And today's topic is about work and maybe being overworked and potentially making a plan to escape your whole life. What do you think about that? Have you ever been in a moment like that where you've just thought about buying a one-way bus ticket somewhere? Just saying like, I'm done. That takes a lot of courage. But I wonder if you would agree with me that it takes a lot more courage to really try to make things work in your own life, even if they seem totally, like circumstances seem totally screwed up. Let me know what you think about that. So in the September 2nd entry, she talked to us about how when we think back to the Garden of Eden, some people blame Adam and Eve on the fact that now we have this existence of having to do work, and if it hadn't been for the original sin, then maybe we could have just been hanging out in the Garden of Eden all the time. But she reminds us that actually Adam had a couple of jobs. Well, first of all, taking care of the garden was a big job, I'm sure, and also naming the animals and things that she described were definitely joyful tasks and probably didn't feel like work because they were just things there in front of him, and he was taking in his environment and learning about the animals and all that. So there was definitely a work element, and I'm sure that they had a home to take care of and everything. So I don't know, I can't remember enough about the story. I don't believe there were angels like waiting on them or anything. So I'm sure there was some sort of work, but yes, in a sense, they were just living, right? And sometimes we all just aspire, we think about our retirement years and we think like, oh, that'll be so great. We'll just have money coming in and then we can just live, right? But maybe you can carve out a life that looks like that somehow without having to wait till you retire. Maybe there's a gift that you have to share with the world. Maybe you would write a book like Sarah wrote a book, and maybe you would just get residuals, royalties, whatever they're called, every month, and then you just live, right? She talked to us about that in another entry where we all just wanted to have like enough security so that we could actually do the things that we want in our lives and bring forth our gifts, right? So she does talk to us too about work-life balance, and she makes a point in saying, I don't think many women today can honestly say that their work life and private life is in balance at all. And then she has a quote from somebody, but she does say, we need to help each other understand it because we will never understand it on our own. We can start by holding one another's hands, by listening to one another's concerns, by reassuring one another today that everything will be all right. So I totally get that feeling where you might feel like a slave. And I think if your personal life is not all that fulfilling, like you don't have joyful things in the rest of your life, then your work can be even worse, because if it's not something you enjoy doing and then you don't have a loved one to come home to, or you don't have hobbies or anything else to distract you from how bad your work is, then that can be really sad. So I hope that this book and this experience of watching the channel this year has allowed you to take stock and carve out some time for yourself. And I hope that you're also exploring some heartfelt desires of things that maybe you would like to do. Whether that becomes a career or not, it doesn't matter. I saw a gentleman today, he was just painting on the side of the road, And I was just thinking about, we've talked so much about gifts and sharing with the world, and I think the message that Sarah's really getting across to us about these gifts and our hobbies and our, like, the things that come from, like, our talents, I guess, like the things that come from within that we just feel like we have to let out into the world. That's really a part of spirit, right? I mean, because that's like your soul. Not necessarily that you have to be a singer, but that's like your soul singing when you're doing the things that really come from deep down, right? Sometimes those things are just like dying to get out. We've talked about that as well. In the September 3rd entry, it's a funny title. She calls it Scrambled or Fried. And when I read that, I thought it was going to be about overworking, because here we are talking about work-life balance, and I bet you can think of times that you've been scrambled or fried, right? But actually the reason for that title is because she talks to us about when you've gotten to the point where you just can't take it anymore. You can't take one more minute. She lists off all these things like bills and fights amongst the kids and, you know, custody arrangements or whatever the things that are going on in your life. And so she sort of had this idea of just going into some little town and becoming a diner waitress. And it just seemed to her that that was a very simple thing of asking people, scrambled or fried, right? I don't know. I mean, she tells us this whole story, and I'll go into it a little bit further. But when I think about being a waitress, I think that is one of the hardest jobs out there. So to me, I don't see that as an escape. But I can understand that that's the particular thing that spoke to her, where she just was thinking, like, I'm just going to give it all up and just go start anew. And usually there are little diners that you could probably get a quick job in if you decided to do that. But she tells us a story about a woman who did work at a diner, and she was well known and everything. And one day she just didn't show up and was totally gone. And everybody thought that it was foul play. There was, you know, speculation, something really bad happened. And I guess she didn't even like tell her kids or anything where she was going, because she just skipped town. Like it was not a crime or murder or anything like that. It was just that she had had enough. So even her, she was doing what Sarah said she thought she would like to do to escape. But I can just imagine, I mean, customer service in any way, and let alone food service, is very, very hard, because you're dealing with, you know, people's dissatisfaction, or, you know, you're like the person bringing out food that you don't even have control over, right? So I think that's hard, but I get it as an example. I would almost say like running away to join the circus would be sort of like another way to think about it, that you would just be trying to escape your life. Sarah does say, actually, the fantasy of running away can be very therapeutic, because it waves a psychic and spiritual red flag warning us that our real life has become unmanageable. We're at a dangerous crossroad, and the barrier arms are coming down. Changes need to occur. Creative choices need to be made. Conversations need to be started and finished. If the fantasy persists to the point of action, asking for help is much better than buying a one-way bus ticket. That's true. We talked about asking for help from spirit and from others in a past video. Look back for that one if you haven't seen it. But like I said, it takes a lot of courage to try to rebuild a life that feels like maybe it's unraveled, right? It might seem easier, although again, very courageous to up and leave and start a brand new life. I can understand the fantasy of the immediate gratification of the escape. However, I have said in another video, and I've learned this very, very strongly in my life, that no matter where you go, you take yourself with you, for sure. So even if you might say this analogy of becoming the waitress, even if you might leave everything and then become a waitress, eventually all of those things are going to catch up with you. Not necessarily like, well, hopefully you didn't leave like your whole family behind, but some people have, you know, like they get to the point where they can't take it. But and no judgment, but I'm just saying that in some way, all of those things are going to manifest in that new situation. You might get a little bit of relief initially, but it's going to all resurface because you're the same person. So why not work out those issues within a situation that you're in? I'm not saying stay in an abusive situation or something that is really, really detrimental to your emotional health at all. Maybe the right thing is to leave in those situations, and most certainly if there's physical danger of any kind. But if it's just little minor things that seem major in the moment, like that whole list of things that she mentioned, why not try to work out, like we have these tools now. This Simple Abundance Path is about sprinkling all these little joyful things in throughout the month. It's about having time for yourself. It's about listening to your heart and living from the heart. Why not try to sprinkle those things in, and hopefully you would see the ripple effect that your life would, I have a kitty, that your life would change for the positive, right? When our waitress or bartender fantasy surfaces, we're psychologically and emotionally, spiritually exhausted by the struggle within. We're seriously wounded by the ancient enmity between daily life and the great work. And when she says a great work, it's capitalized. So I think she means like maybe you're screaming to do something that really comes from your deep, dark, or not dark, but your deepest, darkest places, right? Where you might hide your soul gifts potentially. And she says in that case, Band-Aids don't work anymore. That's a lot like when we were talking about the garden and that thought of repotting yourself, like where your roots are just dried up. Like you've the soil is just no longer filled with nutrients anymore because you've just done everything you can. So it's time to repot. So maybe in that case, it is good to just uproot. And even if it's temporary, just get out of Dodge, And if there's any way that you can try to maintain the structure of your life, I think ultimately changing everything is more drastic than trying to, it takes more courage to stick it out and try to make things work when it's difficult. But perhaps you could still maintain that framework of your life. I don't know. Or maybe just escape. Let me know what you think. You want to escape, or can you see both sides of it? Yeah. She does close this entry by saying, once you've mastered some of these things and you've gotten to the point where you're putting yourself as a priority, right? You won't have to run away if you learn to just say, enough, enough, enough. She's got big exclamation points. And mean it. That also takes a lot of courage too. We talked about saying no, and that can take courage as well. Let me know what you guys think about these two entries and whether you feel really compelled to be doing deeper work than you're doing, like the great work as she describes it, or if you're feeling an escape or scrambled or fried, let me know. I always love hearing your comments, or reading them, I should say. And thank you so much for being here. I will see you guys on the next video. Bye-bye.